Joining us now, MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin. All right, so explain this ruling by Judge Merchan.
Well, there are a number of motions that were on the table, so I'm glad that you're giving me the opportunity, Katie, to explain this ruling because it addresses one, but not all of the things that Donald Trump wants from Judge Merchan. This was an application that Donald Trump made some months ago, asking for Judge Merchan to set aside the jury's verdict on the grounds of the Supreme Court's presidential immunity decision, not because he was immune from the charges themselves, but rather because the jury's verdict was premised on evidence for which he had immunity, specifically evidence that came from his first term as president, whether it was conversations, for example, with his then communications director, Hope Hicks, or tweets that he had issued about Michael Cohen at the time of his presidency. The argument was the jury relied on so much evidence that came from Trump's official conduct that they couldn't have reached a guilty verdict without it. Judge Merchan, in that opinion, disagreeing and saying that there was substantial enough evidence that it's not clear that Donald Trump would have been exonerated on those 34 counts.
So does this sentencing go dormant for 4 years?
Not clear, because the DA's office, in a separate set of briefs or filings, has argued that Judge Merchan has a number of options. He could stay the sentencing and have it go dormant for 4 years, or he could, for example, sentence him to time served. Another option that they put on the table, and one that Merchan seems to have found interesting, is this concept of abatement, which several states use. That's what happens when, after a conviction, but before a sentencing, a defendant either dies or flees. It's sort of like putting an asterisk on a conviction. The conviction isn't vacated, it stays there, but the defendant is never sentenced. And the DA's office says, hey, this is something for you to consider as well. There are many jurisdictions who do that. Alabama is the leading one. Let's follow the Alabama rule, Judge Merchan, and see if we can do that.
So it would remain on his permanent record. I'm going to give you, I don't know if you were able to see this because this just dropped 6 minutes ago as you were walking in. Attorneys for former President-elect Donald Trump, former and President-elect Donald Trump, tell NBC News that a juror from the hush money trial has reached out to them. And in a heavily redacted letter to Judge Juan Merchan, attorney Todd Blanche says there has been a, quote, grave juror misconduct during the trial that resulted in those 34 guilty counts. Blanche said what happened was a violation of Trump's rights under the Constitution and New York law, and as a result, the court must vacate the verdicts. He says this behavior is completely unacceptable, and it demonstrates without question that the verdicts in this case are as unreliable as DA Bragg's promise to protect Manhattanites from violent crime.
I've seen those letters.
Okay,
Kate.
so what is he talking about?
So in a series of letters, the existence of which wasn't even public until yesterday, Todd Blanche made an allegation that there was juror misconduct that justified, again, vacating that verdict. The letters have now been made public, but they are so heavily redacted that we don't really understand what the allegation is, much less who it's made about. What Judge Merchan said yesterday is that although he would demand that the letters be made public, the letters themselves do not constitute a motion to vacate the verdict. If Trump wants to move to vacate the verdict on the basis of juror misconduct, he's going to have to formally put in a motion, including evidence and maybe even a declaration, like a sworn statement by someone who can attest to that juror misconduct. Trump likely would have to also make himself available for a proceeding about that motion, something that it seems like he has not been willing to do thus far. So we'll stay tuned to see whether Todd Blanche files such a motion in this case. Katie.
Okay, let's put the DA's case and this guilty ruling to the side for a moment, whatever happens with that in the sentencing. And let's talk about another lawsuit that Donald Trump is bringing. He brought one against ABC News. He's got one against CBS. ABC settled. The CBS thing is pending. He's now bringing one against Jan Selzer of the Des Moines Register poll. She released a poll right before the election that showed, according to her data, that Iowa was swinging wildly to the left, that suddenly Kamala Harris was very much in the lead, and that women were breaking for her, women and people who were older. That didn't turn out to be the case. The poll did not end up being accurate. How does Donald Trump have any grounds to sue her over a poll?
I don't think that this is going to prove to be a meritorious suit, but I want to distinguish this lawsuit that it will succeed, right? But I think it's worth distinguishing this case from the ABC case, which is a straightforward defamation claim. In a defamation lawsuit, you have to prove that somebody made a false statement of fact about you and that you were injured by it. That's not the claim that Donald Trump is making here. He's making a claim solely under Iowa's consumer fraud statute and saying that essentially Ann Selzer, aided by the Des Moines Register, which published the results of the poll, and Gannett Newspapers, which owns the Register, essentially defrauded or made misrepresentations to people reading that newspaper on which they relied and which damaged Donald Trump. And on both of those counts, it's unclear to me how Donald Trump is going to show that there was reliance by an audience of viewers on that poll. After all, he did not only win the election, he won all 6 of Iowa's electoral votes.
Does it make people a little hesitant to put out a poll if he's bringing lawsuits against a poll that did not turn out to be accurate?
Well, you know, one of the maxims of the first Trump presidency was the cruelty was the point, as Adam Serwer very famously said. Where it comes to Trump's lawsuits now against the media, I think the uncertainty is the point. The fear is the point. Causing people to think twice before they have conversations, even like the one we're having right now, is the entire point. Whether that lawsuit succeeds may not be as important to Donald Trump and his lawyers as it is to instill fear in, for example, the owners of big swaths of newspapers like the Gannett Company or pollsters like Ann Selzer.
Or big media organizations. Lisa Rubin, thank you very much.